Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these episodes, I bring you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as a Healthcare Now radio network, and my new network, the Health Podcast Network. I could not be more excited for this show, my 350th episode. And I don't have one, but two of my show's most frequent guests back to launch their new masterpiece, their latest masterpiece, Transform. Welcome back to the show, John Halamka and Paul Cerrato. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Always exciting to chat with you. So really look forward to the discussion.
Same here. I enjoy it as well. So first of all, Paul, where are you calling in from today?
I'm about an hour north of New York City in a town called Warwick, New York.
Excellent, excellent. What's the weather like? Beautiful?
It's a little rainy, kind of rainy.
Okay. And John, Dr. Halamka, where are you calling in from?
I am in Unity Farm Sanctuary in Sherborne, Massachusetts. But people ask, do I live in Massachusetts? The answer is I live in the Delta Lounge. With over 500,000 miles of travel, I am wherever my laptop is.
Exactly. I love it. So I get you brought it up. I love it. I'm a big fan, supporter of Unity Farm Sanctuary. So give us the latest update on that before we dive into the book, all the great stuff with this amazing book. And I love it. And I got some really cool points to share there as well. But yeah, tell us about the farm, please.
So Paul and I, of course, live in a world of technology where everything is accelerating and change is constant. But yet I live at an animal sanctuary where change is gradual. The animals' lives are measured in the seasons. And so yesterday was shearing day. So what does that mean? It means the alpaca and the sheep look like Dr. Seuss animals. And of course, it's been a very wet spring. Mm-hmm. And so you go from winter to mud season. But it's always generally predictable. And at the moment, all are happy and healthy.
And how many animals again do you have there?
Just north of 400.
I mean, it's growing. Last I remember, I think it was just like 170 or 180, but I don't know, maybe it could be. Wow. Congrats. You guys and Kathy do phenomenal work. Paul, what's your passion? What's your latest passion?
My latest passion, actually, it's been a passion for about 40 years, is music.
Yep.
So I wear three hats in the world. I'm a senior researcher for Mayo Clinic, and I'm a professor at Northeastern University where I teach a course on AI. Mm-hmm. But then in my free time, I run a recording studio. So that means bringing in musicians and singers and songwriters. So I play a few instruments and we record some cover music and some original music, and then we put it on the web.
Love it. Congrats. Yeah, I remember that now. I was trying to think back today. I know you've launched several of your books on my show, which I'm always grateful for. But is this your fifth or sixth book? Seventh book.
Number seventh
book. Wow. Because I think I went back to my notes. Was it 2017 was your first one, or am I missing one? Or
that sounds about right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's 16th for me. But remember, I have been writing since I was 17 years old. And you can still find some of these old classics, on Amazon.
There you go. I know. I actually went through. It's kind of cool just going through all my notes from even the very first episode that we did in your very first book. So I'm always grateful and grateful for it. So before we dive in, and set the stage, what was the greatest aspect or the most fun piece about writing these books, and certainly this book, but all the books? Like, what do you think about? So I guess Paul is one of the initial authors here. What's one of the most fun aspects about writing this book, or what do you think changes the most out there from this book?
I guess the fact that the challenge is to take complex material that very often only a data scientist will understand, and translate it into plain English. And that's although it's a challenge, it's a lot of fun. And as I dig into it and I learn some of these complex ideas, it's a form of education. So it's like I'm constantly learning year after year, perpetual student, so to speak.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, just, some thoughts. All of us do our best every day to have an impact. But what you write is something you leave behind. And isn't it interesting, Paul, you and I lecture all over the world. I think people's memories are short, and in a year or two go by, they won't remember what you said or where you said it. But if you wrote something, that will be something that will last for decades.
And I still get responses to the books that I've written over the years. So yeah, it has a long shelf life.
Yeah, and I think, and to your point, Paul, which you brought up around simplifying extremely complex topics, that's exactly the kind of strategy that I would bring to Capitol Hill, and John, you did certainly as well, is try to make these very complex issues understandable to just the average staffer and the average congressional member or senator and whomever, or president for that matter. So, and you certainly do that. Because actually, when I was reviewing the book today before we came on air, and just how some of these topics you have made very simple for the average person to understand. This is not written for the healthcare insider per se. This is actually written for anybody could pick up this book as a consumer of healthcare and truly understand most of it. And also not just understand, but learn so much. I mean, I've been doing this now a long time as well, I guess 30 something years. And I think I have my finger in the pulse of a lot of stuff, but every time I engage one of your books, I learned a lot more. And I love that. That's kind of why I love living so well, is just because I get to learn every day. So your book brings it up. And even the personal aspect, John, of how you, and I know you mentioned this before, but how, Kathy's, her personal cancer journey that she went through. And that's when I kind of thought about that question, what's the greatest impact from this book? Because, you're going to save millions of lives. With this type of book, but also educating this about the innovation that you're working on with Mayo and so forth. That's kind of what came to my head, but what are your thoughts there?
So, I'm an apolitical person, always been bipartisan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so if you look at the New York Times this morning, there is an interesting article on populations and the future of the human race, given low fertility rates. And the interesting question we all have is, if we are going to need healthcare, who's going to be there to deliver it?
Right.
And so as you look to the future where we're having longer lives, but there are fewer young doctors and nurses to care for us, it is imperative that we use automation so that those professionals we have practice at the top of their license. And really much of the book is asking that question. Yeah. How do we augment humans so they can deliver more care to more people in more locations?
Amen. Love that. So kind of, diving in here, tell us about the Mayo Clinic platform. You kind of created that. Was that about 8 years ago, or how long ago was that, John?
Yeah. So Paul, isn't it amazing how time flies?
Oh no, am I way off?
January 1, 2020.
Oh, okay. Just 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
right.
Okay.
And so the idea was straightforward, which was, if we are going to, as a society, leverage the privacy protected data of patients of the past, we better have a standard approach, not an ad hoc approach, so that we can bring in innovators, global innovators, large and small. We can find adopters, and those may be rural. Those may be those without ability to develop AI on their own, or they could be academic medical centers. They could be pharma organizations. And so curate the world's data, bring together the world's innovators, and disseminate it to get adoption with the ultimate impact of touching 4 billion people. So, as you say, it's been a 5-year journey so far.
It's excellent. Love it. And Paul, you joined, my timing and time does fly, but about 2 years ago or so. When did you join?
Well, that was 4 years.
You joined 4 years ago.
Yeah, 4 years.
All right, I'm gonna stop with my guessing of my time frames. I've known John for so long. I did come across a picture of you and I, John, on stage. I think it was 2010. I just found it the other day. It's kind of cool. From we're at a White House, I think it was in the White House or briefing center or something like that. But anyhow, I've known, yeah, John a long time, so time certainly does fly.
Yeah.
Um, and then for those that may tuned in a little late, my special guests today are Dr. John Halamka and Mr. Paul Cerrato, and we are discussing the new masterpiece, Transform, their 7th book together. Did I get that right at least, finally? Excellent. So segment, talking about the book and how you guys parse it out. Chapter 1 starts with building the network. And so what network, why is this pivotal in reinventing healthcare?
So the network we refer to as Connect, Mayo Clinic Platform Connect. Yeah. And basically it's a gigantic data set that includes tens of millions of patient records from Mayo Clinic and from hospitals around the world, basically. So the question is, why do you need this data set and what value does it have? There's so many hidden gems within the patient records that we have access to. And with the right kinds of AI, you can find patterns that normally you would not find. So the example that came to mind is take something like pancreatic cancer. So that's one of the most deadly cancers because it is usually detected very late. And so the survival rate is very small. So let's say, for argument's sake, that you dive into this Connect network and you find that a very large percentage of patients who have pancreatic cancer also have elevated hemoglobin levels, just pulling this out. So that gives you a clue as perhaps there is some link between elevated hemoglobin levels and pancreatic cancer. Could this be used as an early detection tool? So there are hundreds of thousands of different possible biomarkers that we might be able to pull out of Connect in order to improve patient diagnosis and patient treatment.
And so, Justin, since you and I have been doing this for so long, together, that in the journey from that White House briefing in 2010, some has been technology evolution, some has been policy change, but a lot of it is psychology. Who will share what data and how will they protect privacy and reputation and intellectual property? So as Paul has said, so much of that first chapter is, so how do you go about the psychology problem? That's probably the hardest piece.
Right. Very true. I mean, can you ballpark how many data points you guys have access to or you integrate in over an annual basis or over the time frame you're building in the last 5 years? Do you have
Well, the number is 56 million patients birth to death, but the number of data points is multiple billions.
Yeah. Wow. So just think with that network, it's truly building. That's phenomenal. So as follow up, so since, and I mentioned this early on, since your primary audience is consumer, how is this book different than the last 6 books that you've written together? Paul?
So the last 6 books have been primarily for physicians and for technologists. So we're using different language. So folks who have an interest in healthcare but are not specializing in it could understand it. And one of the concepts that we try to explain is something called a artificial neural network, which is even hard for professionals to understand, but with the right graphics and the right simple language, we can explain it.
Do you want me to pull up that graphic?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Let's give it a shot.
This is one of the images that we use in the book. And as I said, it's to explain what an artificial neural network is. So to start with, an ANN is kind of like the brain's network of neurons. So a nerve cell has a tentacle going into it and one coming out of it, and it sends information along a path. Similarly, the neural network that we're looking at here has a similar function. So the input in this case would be a bunch of images from patients. So some of these images are of normal moles and some of them are of melanomas. So what the neural network is capable of doing is parsing out those that are dangerous from those that are not. So it goes through a series of steps. So initially it might look at the edges of a mole, and the edges of a normal mole are round, whereas the edges of a melanoma are jagged. So the network would pull that fact out, and then on the next layer, it might look for other markers of disease. So a melanoma might be bleeding as opposed to a mole, which is not. So it goes through a series of steps looking for features in the images that are unique to a melanoma versus a normal mole. And then because the process is imperfect, there's a process called back propagation, which looks backwards to find its mistakes, and it goes back and forth until it gets very close to being accurate. And it's now being used by physicians and the public to help pinpoint skin cancer.
Mm-hmm. Love it. It's excellent. Excellent. Anything you want to add to that, John?
Well, and remember, I mean, as Paul has described it, this is math, not magic.
Yep.
You know, people say, oh, well, is this AI sentient? Is it making decisions? Is it thinking? And we've heard from Paul that imagine you take 100 million images of skin cancer, and there are going to be those that are single color and multicolored, those that are smooth and those that are rough, those that bleed and not bleed. The mathematical models created by AI exceed human capacity to compute. I can only compute 5 separate variables and keep them in my head. But hey, an algorithm could do hundreds and it would not even skip a beat. So it may be able to actually recognize features of the skin cancer that a human can't perceive because it's simply looking at math in the image. And that's why it's so important to do this as an augmentation to human experience and decision making.
Yep. I love it. That's exactly what we want people to start to really understand about AI and the opportunity that it brings to us, probably in almost every aspect of our life. What is the purpose of tech stops throughout the book?
So although our main audience are consumers and patients, we also, our secondary audience are professionals. We didn't want to ignore them.
Love it.
Tech stops are deeper dives into the various subjects so that the book appeals to both audiences.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And I know not part of the book, but a recent announcement talking about technology is you have a new person leading AI joining you guys, correct, John? Is that Mickey Tripathi?
Yeah, so Mickey, who was the national coordinator and the assistant secretary of health for the Biden administration, on May 1st joined Mayo Clinic as our chief AI implementation officer. And you may ask, well, what does that really mean? There is a huge gap in society between the math, that is the finished algorithm developed in the lab, and it actually being used in the examination room. It actually being used to help clinical decision making. And so his role is to look across all of Mayo, platform, Center for Digital Health, information technology, our generative AI projects and digital pathology, find the treasures, as you've heard Paul describe, and make sure that they are adopted for their greatest impact while also minimizing harm.
Love it. Yeah. Mickey's a longtime leader in the industry as well. Been in the trenches for 25, 30 years, or if not longer. So no, that's a great win for Mayo. Great win. I'm sure you love working with him again, because you guys kind of cross paths a lot throughout the decades. So
remember, we were born on the same day.
I didn't know that, actually. I don't think I knew that. That's pretty cool.
So, when you see Mickey and I together, it's clear we were separated at birth.
It's so cool. Very cool. I was happy. I was very, very happy to read that. So congrats again. Moving on a little bit, and you guys bring this up a lot in the book, is this Coalition for Health AI. Let's use this for a couple of minutes here. So what exactly is CHI, or Coalition for Health AI, and what's its main function?
John,
Please go ahead. Go ahead, Paul.
You describe it, and then I'm going to add something to it.
There you go.
You've got it.
Love it.
So imagine that, and I'll use an analogy. You go to the supermarket and there's a can of soup, but the soup doesn't tell you what's inside. doesn't tell you how much fat or sodium. Would you buy the soup? Well, probably you'd want a little more information. And so here's the challenge. When you buy an AI algorithm today, it's like buying a soup can with no label.
That's right.
And so the idea 4 years ago, as you say, time flies. 8 organizations came together and said, let's develop the soup label for AI, a so-called data card and model card. What are the ingredients? But then how do those ingredients come together and how does it perform? Today, there are nearly 4,000 organizations in the Coalition for Health AI working on guidelines and guardrails, best practices, how to both look at novel products, but how to monitor them once they're in the marketplace, just as you would a drug.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue into what I wanted to mention, which is an example of algorithms gone wrong that don't use all these guidelines that John was speaking about. A couple of years ago, Epic, which is a large EHR vendor, came out with a sepsis model, which was supposed to help detect sepsis in its early stages. And according to the published research, it fell short. It did not detect the disease very early. So the question is, why not? And one of the reasons is because of something called data shift. So over time, the population that was used to create this algorithm started to change. There was changes in the ICD-9 and ICD-10 coding. Then there was COVID. And with all these changes, the algorithm was no longer up to snuff. So it's things like this that encouraged the coalition to promote assurance labs, where we actually get very, very solid evidence that a specific algorithm will work in the trenches, so to speak.
Yeah, and I love it. Thank you both. And when John first brought it up to me, I put my hat in the ring and I joined one of the work groups, and it is a phenomenal mix of, thought leaders and people feet on the street. And obviously there's vendors in there and a lot of clinicians, scientists, experts from all different walks of life. So it's, you guys are a great coalition, a true coalition that has been built. So phenomenal work and well done there. In the closing couple of minutes here, I want to close with exactly where people can find this book, Transform. But also, before we get there, I would love to kind of look into the proverbial crystal ball a little bit and get each of your perspectives, maybe 90 seconds each or so. What are you guys most excited about over the next couple of years in healthcare? So, Paul, I'll start with you.
I'm really excited about generative AI and large language models. Right now, it's very much a mixed bag, with things like ChatGPT offering brilliant insights as well as disastrous hallucinations.
Right.
So with the right guidelines and with enough good research, eventually we'll be getting tools that truly help physicians and nurse practitioners to improve diagnosis and treatment. It's just a matter of time.
Yep.
And I would add, I've told you this before, Justin, that 50% of everything I was taught in medical school was wrong. I just don't know which 50%.
Yeah.
And the hope is that AI, predictive and generative, will be able to look at the latest evidence, the patient longitudinal experience, be able to bring me up-to-date information to help me deliver the best possible care to the patient. It was not something that was to human scale because there are 800 papers written in my field every day. I'm a little behind in my reading. I look forward to having a tool I use every day that truly improves the quality and the patient experience in every interaction that I have.
Love it. Well said. So, Paul and John, where can the listeners find the book, buy the book, and also follow your work?
So the book is available on Amazon. I'm sure there are several other websites where they can find it, but Amazon is probably the place where most people would go. And I was told the other day by the publisher that it became the number one new offering for health policy. So
Love
I
it.
thought that was kind of cool.
I have no doubt.
And Paul and I, we are writing every day, we are speaking every day. certainly if you go to Mayo Clinic Platform.org, you will see some of the latest work we're doing together there.
Excellent. What's the next conference you're going to, John? Do you know?
Well, let's see. It's the end of May. So Mayo Clinic runs the largest innovation conference each year called Platform Ed.
Yeah.
And Platform Ed is in Minneapolis, June 3rd through 4th. So that is the next one. Then to be followed by Health Europe and many other opportunities to come.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. Well, John and Paul, thank you so much for sharing all this, launching your book on my show. It's always great having both of you on air, and I truly appreciate you both taking time out of your busy schedules to join me. And a big thank you to all my listeners and supporters who made us 2024 Podcast of the Year. We are so grateful. Please tune in weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. And as always, you can find my work at LinkedIn, Justin T. Barnes, and track me on Twitter, HIT Advisory, and use the hashtag ThisJustinRadio so we respond to your comments from the show. If you missed any of this episode or want to hear more, and certainly more of this episode, as we're about to do a double episode, and you'll hear more coming up, you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple iTunes, Amazon Music, Megaphone, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. And you can check out some of the new thought leadership we posted at justinbarnes.com. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.